Jillian Schultz. Jillian, if you can come join us, and also editor Olivia Shaw. Welcome, Leslie. Welcome, Jillian. And welcome, Olivia. Thanks again for being here. Before we open up questions with the audience, maybe you guys... Well deserved. Congratulations. Well deserved. Before we open it up to the audience, maybe you guys can kind of share what the genesis of the project was. I mean, in the sense of how did you hear about the story and decide to go down this 9-year rabbit hole?
I'll start and then I can pass it on to you. Okay, so Jillian and I, we met in China, and we were kind of there during this very golden age, now that we look back on it. And so, okay, fast forward, I returned to America, and I'm studying at the Stanford Doc Film program, and oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm like losing my thread. Our friend in 2014, our friend from Beijing called and said, hey, I'm in Los Angeles, and I didn't think anything of it. And then just a couple days before I got married, I saw her on video chat, and she was oiling up her big belly. And I was like, oh my God, you're pregnant. And she's like, yeah, I'm gonna have an American baby. And I was like, oh my God, that makes a lot of sense. That sounds like everything you've always wanted. And she had a very wealthy boyfriend, so I was like, you must be staying with your boyfriend's friends. And she's like, no, you don't need friends to do what I'm doing. Just go, to the city in Los Angeles, and it's super crazy. The whole city is taken over by this industry. Let's make a film about it. It's super sci-fi, super weird. So I got on a mega bus and went down to LA and stayed with her inside of the Maternity hotel. And it was really crazy the way that it looked on the outside, like super nondescript SoCal, tract housing. And we would take these walks around our neighborhood at night, and there would be minivans parked in front of each house, and she'd be like, well, that's a maternity hotel, and that's a maternity hotel, and that one is rivals with that one. And you couldn't see anything. So all of a sudden, the image sprouted in my mind of, hundreds of women behind closed doors on this hilltop alone, incubating their children, their babies, and also their destinies. So that's sort of where the inception of the idea came from. And then, how we ended up sort of embedding ourselves in this world. I'll let Jillian speak to that.
Yeah,
She's
so
a big part of it.
We having just returned from China, I had a lot of linguistic and cultural fluency and started getting on websites, like all Chinese language websites, like ChineseInLA.com, and it's like Craigslist full of ads for maternity hotels, seeking nannies, seeking drivers, seeking cooks, and we started to respond to people or respond to ads offering maternity hotel apartments, things like that, and saying we were newly returned from Beijing, which was true, and we were going to check it out for friends. We wanted to see our family members. Leslie was looking on behalf of a cousin. We were just like...
I really had a cousin.
Yeah, we wanted to learn more about the industry, and then with our fun sort of, I would say we made a good pair in meeting these people and making friends with them, and we would play, I often play the role of dancing blonde monkey, I look like I do when I speak Chinese, and people were like, whoa, what's that about, and so it really, it allowed people to kind of welcome us into their worlds, and then very slowly as you begin to build these relationships and friendships and ask questions, all of the characters were like, oh, you're creatives, you're artists, oh, Leslie, you're a filmmaker. you should make a film about this. You know, it's like they all sort of stepped into the process, and then throughout, incredibly, like, this was a very DIY indie film, and much of what we were able to do and accomplish was because of the support and active participation of our subjects. You know, they really were like, you have a place to stay, we'll feed you, we'll give you access to things, we'll introduce you to people. So it really sort of, this amazing networked world opened up inside of that ecosystem, supported very much by the characters themselves.
And what do you think was their incentive to do that? I mean, in the sense that, did they just want to support a creative project, or did they want to just kind of showcase what they were doing?
That's a really great question. I don't think they were just trying to support a creative project. A lot of these women, you know, we knew that access was going to be incredibly difficult, but I think we sort of unlocked, you know, one key to like Chinese culture, which is this principle of reciprocity. So it was really about thinking about like, well, not just what can we take, but like what can we give? And it was very apparent soon after we met, you know, each of the maternity hotel operators, that they just like zeroed in on us. Like they were sharking us. They were like, oh, and by the way, I have all these like bills that I need you to like call the customer service and like help me with all these like English translation needs. And so you know, they're like, and let's make this film together and we'll go in on it, you know, I want a part of it, it's gonna be a huge success, like let me introduce you to everyone and help you out with this. So really it was about, for the women, it was about the fact that they were like their age and had lived in China, and so they were so bored, so isolated, so this was so not what they thought it would be, and so they were just like hungry for our friendship. And then for the maternity hotel operators, they were like, oh, I'm operating in this gray area and I need a lot of help, you know, and so we need the, you know, people, English language, and so they all really, they wanted me there, they hosted me in the maternity hotels, so I could like be the company for a lonely mother, you know, so I was very much at their service.
Oh, wow. And Olivia, you know, in the sense of, with the observational approach that you guys took, I mean, how did you guys work over the years? And I mean, I assume there's a lot of footage to go through. So what was that kind of storytelling process that you guys developed in the editing room together?
Yeah, so I think the whole editing process, I mean, we were editing, I mean, maybe it took like 6 years, but by the time Olivia entered the picture, we had pretty much a rough assembly and all of these characters, and we were trying to weave them into a kaleidoscope. Is that enough of a setup?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that I think one of the things that excited me so much was that there were so many more characters and so many more rooms to enter and so many more stories. I think even to the point when we like walked the film, I was still discovering things hidden away in the footage. So it was an amazing experience to kind of navigate through everything that you had created. But yeah, we went back and forth, and there's so many versions of this film that exist in the world, and I think the big structural decision to stick with the kaleidoscopic approach was really important for this version of the film. I think it makes it much more complex, much more uncomfortable at times, but much more kind of so many more metaphors, so many more things going on, versus we did have a version of the film at one point that was like kind of just 4 of our characters, and it's kind of the process of arriving to birth.
Yeah, we had a version with no industry, which I think was a big mistake, but because we were trying to find the balance of like character driven, which I didn't really want it to be, but I felt like, you know, after following the characters for so many years, it was really organic, and probably, you know, the best thing about documentary is when you see people over time, when you see people changing over time. So we really didn't want to let go of that, but we also wanted to incorporate like the unraveling of, you know, we call it the breadcrumb theory, like we're feeding you like very intentionally bits of information so that you sort of gradually understand like the scale of this invisible web that really connects all the characters, but at the same time move forward with each of the character arcs themselves. So that took 6 years. So I wouldn't recommend it. She's making a film now and it's gonna be kaleidoscopic and I'm just like, oh my God, entering back into Libya. Yeah.
Well, I think the journey was worth it, at least what we see on screen. Any questions from the audience out there? Yes, you there.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you. It was such a great movie. Thank you so much for showing that, like, because I know it's been a very big topic. I'm from China, so it's a big topic there, and also I know, like, for the Chinese Americans here, it's also been a big topic. And thank you so much for telling their story. I know earlier you mentioned about, like, how they, like, the subject in the film are very eager to kind of participate, and yet, and also, like you mentioned, it's a like 9-year process. I know, like in that 9 years, a lot of things could happen. Like I know the government's attitude about those, business are really like, harsher and harsher, and they bust a lot of those plays in a couple of years, in the previous couple of years. So I wonder, does the subject's attitude about like participating in this film ever change?
Oh, that's a really good question. On the US side, there were FBI raids that happened soon after I decided to make this film, and that definitely put it complicated. I thought it would complicate the characters' willingness to participate. But after this sort of smoke cleared, it was really clear that, actually nobody's breaking any laws. Everything is legal. The only thing that they were catching some maternity hotels for was like tax evasion, visa fraud, hiring undocumented workers, right? So it was, the smoke sort of cleared on that, and so when I really filmed the bulk of the film, I was surprised that everyone was still very much amenable to the idea. They knew they weren't doing anything wrong. The point that it's interesting to share with this audience is the trajectory of the US-China relationship throughout the course of this filmmaking, including the US politics. So when this film was made, it was really the high point of US-China. There was like $4.6 billion of Chinese money coming in investments in the US economy in 2016. And then now it's like, the worst possible state of US-China, we're gonna go to war over Taiwan like any minute now, supposedly. So that journey has been really interesting. And then add that on top, like the Trump years, like it was really hard to fundraise for the film during that time because people were kind of worried, about sort of telling these stories. So yeah, I mean, in short, we've had to, and it still keeps changing, right? So this film will be sort of evergreen in the sense that you'll always be able to look at it from the lens of the current political situation. The thing I will finally say about the participants is that whereas when they began, the film project, they were probably very open and had nothing to hide or felt like they would want to shout it from the mountaintops. They were proud to have an American baby. It's a status symbol. Now, I think in China, with nationalism and anti-American rhetoric, it's very much something that they don't want people to know about. So, I mean, fortunately, the film's not going to be released in China. They don't have any kind of infrastructure for independent film. Maybe it'll get pirated and go onto the black market, but for the most part, I think now it's not so much something that they want to be. They're very proud of. They might even not want their kids to know that they have this.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. Yes, you there.
As filmmakers, I'm curious how you navigate or continue to navigate the part of, there's already so much discrimination and racism, and sort of the right wing kind of taking over your project almost as oh, look at this, proof of, additional potentially even more discriminatory laws. That's something I always fear, trying to put something out there for the
Absolutely, and that's what I'm talking about during the Trump years, when it was like, I had to every day, and in every conversation with funders, like, face this question. And I think Jillian has played a huge role in sort of, you know, helping with this context. And, you know, listen, I can't not make this film or not tell the truth because I'm afraid of what other people might do with it. So ultimately, I just had to get to a place where I felt like it was more important to tell the truth. It's more important to tell and show the human experience of the people involved. And I mean, Jill would say anyone who watches the film can't really.
I think people hear about the premise and they're like, what if it falls into the wrong hands? But you all just watch the film, and Leslie's filmmaking, like, it's such a powerful, beautiful story of the choices people make to make a better life for their children. And it's like undeniably, to me, universal. It like really hits at that level. It's not sensationalized, although the topic is, right? So also I think it's interesting to note that like birth tourism, layering the political arcs that Leslie has been talking about on top of like COVID, birth tourism as we have seen it represented here, this phenomenon doesn't really exist anymore in this scale. It's like much more private, much less of this like multi-million-dollar shadow economy. So it's sort of it's a chapter in time, it's a little bit of a time capsule. And so I think there's something also unique about that. It's not speaking to what's happening in 2023. It is in a way, but not the phenomenon as we know it in the film.
Well, very cool. Well, again, thank you again for sharing the film. I'd like, as we kind of wrap up, two things I'd requested. So you just saw this really wonderful film, and you know, independent filmmakers like this team rely on us to go out there and help spread the word. The film's going to be on PBS's POV this fall. Is that right?
Yeah, it's going to have a national broadcast on December 11th.
So on social media this week, you know, let people know that you saw this and to be looking forward to the fall. And I'd like to try to get a photo with the group. Do you guys mind kind of coming here and facing the screen? I'll come up here. And we're going to get the crowd involved in this, okay, guys? Okay. You guys come over here one foot. There we go. 3, 2, 1. Woo! Come on, everybody in the crowd. Let's get some excitement. Awesome. Thank you again, Jillian, Leslie, and Olivia for sharing this beautiful film. And thank you all for coming to DocFest.